Killian Medex dreams of becoming a professional bodybuilder. He suffers from fits of rage and takes care of his grandfather. For dinner, Killian eats no less than 12 eggs and a hefty piece of meat. The walls and ceiling of his room are covered with posters of famous bodybuilders. Killian is tormented by migraines and nightmares. He hears different voices in his head. Recently, he promised the nurses that he would crack open their skulls and drink their brains like soup. The big guy injects himself with steroids and spends all his free time at the gym. He dreams of meeting bodybuilding star Brad Vanderhorn and keeps writing him letters. Before the competition, Killian was so nervous that he threw up, but then he pulled himself together, inspired by his own radiant smile, and stepped onto the stage. He tried harder than anyone, showing off his magnificent physique, but it seemed the judges did not appreciate it and pushed him to the edge of the stage. Killian works and shops at a local supermarket. He likes the cashier, Jessie. Unfortunately, their shifts never overlap. Killian dreams that one day his photo will be printed on a magazine cover. He hesitated for a long time before taking the first step, but eventually he walked out of the store, then came back and asked Jessie out on a date. Immediately, he assumed she had a boyfriend, apologized, and left. The girl did not even have time to say a word. Killian decided to make a video about himself and uploaded it to YouTube. He talked about who he was and showed off his body. At one point, Killian felt such pain that he fell to the floor. He had to start all over again. Unfortunately, the commenters did not spare Killian and wished him the worst. Besides steroids, our hero also dabbles in illegal substances to make training more fun. Killian called the painters who, in his opinion, had done a poor job painting their house and demanded they apply another coat. But when they refused, Killian threatened that he would come over himself and paint their skulls, but they told him to get lost. Killian immediately jumped into his car and drove to confront them. The store was already closed. Then Killian smashed through the door and began wrecking everything inside. A sudden wave of pain bent him in half. The athlete stumbled back into the store, cutting himself on broken glass, and somehow managed to flee the scene. However, it all ended in a car crash. At the hospital, Killian was examined, and the verdict was grim. He was taking substances that were far too strong. Because of that, his blood pressure was extremely high, and soon his internal organs would start to fail. They also found tumors in his liver that needed to be removed immediately, but Killian refused the surgery. He did not want any scars, since he was a bodybuilder. That evening, Killian simply escaped from the hospital and continued taking steroids. He had a problem. His legs would not grow. The man consumed 6,000 calories a day, but still could not gain mass. Killian asked the internet how to make people like him and got some solid advice. He needed to smile more. At work, the nice guy spat into a customer's pie because he did not like her. One day, Jessie herself called Killian and said she accepted his invitation to go out. The bodybuilder washed, shaved, dressed up, and got ready for the date. He practically melted when Jessie touched his face and blushed, though it was not visible. Killian admitted that he went to the store only during Jessie's shifts just to see her. She actually liked him too, and thought he was sweet. The conversation started well, but then Killian suddenly muttered that his father had died and his mother too. His dad had killed her and then shot himself. He also confessed that Jessie reminded him of his mother. After that, Killian ordered 7 dishes from the menu, and Jessie began to realize she had made a huge mistake agreeing to go out with this strange guy. Killian was very surprised that Jessie didn't know who Brad Vanderhorn was. He's a 2-time Mr. Olympia. How can anyone not know that person? Does Jessie even know anyone at all? When the girl asked, "What kind of music does he listen to?" the man kept talking about the Mr. Olympia title. Killian talked about his delts and biceps, about training, sets, and muscle growth. Poor Jessie went completely flat when Killian started talking about bouts of nausea during workouts. The girl said she would go to the restroom. In fact, she ran out of the restaurant and asked the waitresses to tell Killian that she would not be coming back. The bodybuilder was upset and ordered a ton of fast food and desserts on top of everything. He continues to write to Vanderhorn and tell him everything about his personal life. Today, Killian was going to drive to another competition, but men whose shop he had recently trashed pulled him out of the car. Killian fought back as best he could, but in the end, they beat him with an iron pipe and kicked him. The bloodied bodybuilder groaned in pain and clutched his broken ribs. Still, he immediately got back in the car. Killian still needed to get to the contest. The battered bodybuilder stripped off his clothes on the move and began lunging at people so they would let him through. Everyone realized this guy was dangerous, so they didn't stop him from getting on stage. Besides, they had just called his name. The judges and audience were stunned to see the beaten contestant. Swollen and covered in blood, Killian started changing poses. He was shaking with pain and tears streamed down his face. In the end, his body couldn't take it, and the man lost consciousness. Killian woke up in an ice bath. The footage of his performance immediately hit the internet. Enraged, the gym rat ruined all the videotapes of other bodybuilders' performances and gutted the refrigerator. After that, he tore posters off the walls and, exhausted, collapsed to sleep on the floor. To his legal advisor, Killian lied that he was dating Jessie. He also claimed he'd been photographed for a magazine cover. Everything in his life was supposedly fine. That evening, Killian picked up a night escort. He preferred to show the woman his body rather than watch her. The guy also experienced the main side effect of steroids, a decrease in male potency. Killian began behaving oddly with customers. He was absent from work for a week and a half. Customers complained about him, and other employees felt uncomfortable working with him, so the manager would have to fire him. He was scaring everyone. The man complained that he had nothing to support his grandfather with, and that his name and image brought recognition to the company. The manager realized Killian was seriously unwell. A little more, and Killian would definitely have cracked his boss's skull. Once the bodybuilder was eating in a cafe and saw one of his attackers there with his family. Killian told the children that their father had split his skull open with an iron pipe. Then he gave the kid a piece of advice. Don't drink Coca-Cola or you'll get fat. And nobody likes fat people. Killian returned to his seat, downed a glass of cola in one gulp, and ordered people not to look at him. He shouted loudly, frightening the patrons. Killian eventually lost control and confronted the diners. He insulted everyone in the room, then talked to himself for a while before going outside and smashing a car window with his head. By that time, the cops had arrived. They restrained the hooligan, beat him with batons, and sprayed his face with pepper spray. Suddenly, Killian felt unwell. The cops feared he might die and called an ambulance. Killian had broken several laws and also owed $1,200 to the owner of the car he had smashed. The man realized he was broken, so he said goodbye to his lawyer and thanked the woman for trying to help him. Killian got into his car and thought about how fun it would be to shoot everyone around him. Soon, packages with various parts began arriving for him, parts from which Killian assembled an assault rifle. Later, his arsenal expanded with a shotgun, a pistol, and plenty of ammunition. At night, the man started visiting nightclubs, showing off his well-practiced poses, while during the day, he trained himself to shoot with the rifle. It seemed that tragedy was inevitable, but one day the phone rang. Killian received a call from none other than Brad Vanderhorn himself, his idol, to whom the bodybuilder had written hundreds of letters. The champion was coming to town in a week. Why not meet and have a chat? Killian attended Brad's photo shoot and once again became inspired by bodybuilding, especially since the champion showered him with compliments. Brad even allowed his fan to touch his sculpted abs. The champion asked again if he truly was his biggest fan. In short, Vanderhorn grew close to his #1 admirer, and it seemed that Killian did not particularly like that. While Mr. Olympia was talking on the phone with his wife and kids, Killian quickly slipped out of his trailer. But then he started calling Brad repeatedly, trying to sort things out. After all, he only wanted friendship, and now Brad had dragged him into all this. He hoped Brad would eventually call him back. At the club, a suspicious guy approached the big man and suggested they have some fun in the restroom. The guy was talking nonsense. It seemed he hated everyone in the world. Killian had a weapon and suggested they deal with the problem radically. It was time to finish off their enemies once and for all. The stranger didn't hesitate to agree. Fortunately, that night, Killian didn't kill anyone, but he left a message for Brad and promised that he would definitely take someone out. That evening, Killian, armed with a shotgun, broke into the house of a man, one of the judges from the competition he had participated in. The man hadn't liked Killian's thigh biceps, which was deeply offensive to him. The judge promised to file a report with the committee, but it was already too late. Killian ordered the man to strip down to his underwear, then turned on the music and commanded him to show his muscles: front double biceps, side triceps, flex, and don't forget to smile. Smile with everything you've got. Killian then told the hostage to kneel before him. The man screamed and begged for his life. Killian simply stood up and walked away. The bodybuilder once again turned to the internet and asked what one should do to be remembered. "Be brave and change history," the search engine suggested. Those words inspired Killian. He wrote on the wall, "Killian Medex was here." He grabbed a bag full of weapons and headed to Brad Vanderhorn's performance. The bodybuilder was on stage when Killian took the rifle from his bag and began walking toward him. For a moment, he simply watched his idol, then opened fire. Each shot was accompanied by flashes of memories from his past. Killian saw his parents again, himself as a child, and his grandfather. He remembered his own moment on stage and suddenly came to his senses. He hadn't crossed the line yet. Killian changed his mind about shooting and instead rushed home. The man broke down crying and hugged his grandfather. "It's all right," the old man comforted him. "We have each other." The next morning, Killian disassembled all his weapons and threw the bag away near the railroad tracks. Returning home, he flushed all his pills down the toilet and took a photo in the garage. He hung his picture on the wall. Killian was certain that soon everyone would know his name, know exactly who he was. That's where the movie ends. Thank you for watching.